Hello and welcome to another episode of the 60 Go podcast. My name's Tom Campbell. Great to have your company. Joined by Damien Seibold. Sieves, let's get straight into it. The elephant in the room. Parramatta's second half could be the worst half of football you'll see all year.
Yeah, it was disgusting, mate. I was texting you the other night, and fortunately, I was watching my son play footy at the time, and I had it recorded so I could watch it when I got home. It's fair to say I didn't. I ended up sitting through some extended highlights, and it just looked like they'd shut up shop. But whether the heat had got to them, or they can't really use the excuse that they'd defended much in the first half because they had all the footy. So yeah, it's a really strange one, especially after the win against the Cowboys the week before. In saying that, if we were to say, is there a worse half of footy this year, the Cowboys would have given them a run for their money. So there's no form line at all that previous weekend. Para's struggling.
No, I wouldn't say it's a strong win at all now, that the fact that they beat the Cowboys last week, given that what they faced up against Cronulla.
Yep. Both teams are struggling.
The fact that Mitch Moses isn't there obviously is a loss, but that doesn't impact leaking 44 points on what could have been 60, really, the fact they missed that many goals. Do we make changes here at Parramatta? Do you think that they have to? Like, is there a choice in the matter?
Well, there's a difference between, having to and having someone there that is adequate enough to do a job. I think Para's best 18 to 20 players, the roster that they've got, the way that they started the year, they should be doing a lot better even without Moses. I mean, you can clearly see attack-wise that they miss Moses. All of their game plans based around him. He steered the ship. He's not only that calming influence, he's also where every bit of creativity comes from. So that's evident. But having no Moses has got nothing to do with your defence. And the defence seems to be woeful at the moment. So, yeah, the easy thing to say is, let's make changes. They need to bring other blokes in. But you've got to have someone who's up to it. And outside of their best 20 players, I don't think they have got people that are up to it.
Fair enough. Another team that was disappointing over the weekend was the Warriors. If you go back 2 weeks, they smashed South Sydney. Go forward a week, they get a draw at home against Manly. They were heavily favoured to win that game, and they only escaped with a draw. The draw obviously was taxing on both teams coming out of the weekend. Manly were in a shootout against the Titans, and then the Warriors really didn't fire a shot against the Dragons at all. They'd have to be really disappointed with that, because these 2-week periods where you don't get the results that you're expected to cost you top 4 spots.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I think you go back last week. So there was 4 teams that played essentially full golden point game. So the Warriors Manly one finished in a draw, and the Raiders Titans one, well, I think it came down to 6 seconds to go when Fogarty nailed that field goal. If you look at the performances of all 4 sides, they were all very underwhelming. So, a couple of them attacked really well, but defensively, all 4 sides were way off the mark compared to where they normally are. And I'll even say, the Titans, because I think the Titans are slowly improving, even though they're still my wooden spoon favourite at the moment. There's probably a bit more upside in the Titans than what I think is there for the Tigers. So it wouldn't shock me if the Titans end up winning a couple of games shortly. But where I'm heading with this is golden point games, it zaps teams. And it's really obvious that all 4 teams struggled coming out of that last weekend.
Not only that, but if you look at all 4 of those teams, the Warriors had to travel to St. George.
Yeah.
Manly had to travel to the Titans. The Titans was involved in one of those games last week, so obviously they couldn't travel. But Manly had to travel, and then the other team, the Raiders, had to travel as well. So not only were they coming off the back of these long, exhausting games, they had to travel on top of that, and some of them out of the country and interstate.
Yeah, look, mate, 100%. And I think, well, Manly, I thought they may have actually flown back into the Gold Coast and just stayed there from New Zealand, because they flew back to Sydney and then they were at home for a couple of days and then they went back to the Gold Coast. So that's a lot of travel in a week with 2 tough games of footy. The yeah, let's go Manly for a second. I think if you said to them 3 weeks ago that you were going to walk away with 5 points out of the next 3 rounds, knowing that you had Penrith, Warriors in New Zealand, and then the Titans, who are desperate. At the moment, they're trying to do anything to get a win. I think Manly would be ecstatic, and Anthony's very happy about the 5 points that they've picked up over the last 3 weeks. The Raiders, there's been signs the last fortnight that they're starting to dip a little bit. Now that Jamal Fogarty's injured, I see a tough month ahead for the Raiders. Now, they're still going to win games at home or push teams at home. I just think that with the injury toll that they're starting to tick up and no Fogarty, it's going to be a tough month or so. Titans are getting closer to a win. They really are. And I think the Warriors game, you could almost put a line through it, forgive and forget. Dragons aren't as bad as what people think they are. Warriors come off a really tough game. Probably, can be forgiven. They're back at home this week. And again, it gets harder and harder for the Titans as well, because they're getting closer to a win, but now they've got to go to New Zealand and take on the Warriors, who are coming off an absolute horrendous game. So they're going to turn it around no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one of those teams struggling is the Cowboys. We spoke about this stat last year about where teams start their sets, and Cowboys for this year are second last as far as where they start their sets, and the only team worse than them is the Gold Coast. So that's not great form to be going off of the fact. And I know that that's not everything, but you look at the teams that are at the top: Penrith, Canberra, the Dolphins are up there. The Dolphins have stacked a lot of wins this year. So Manly's up there. So you look at that stat, it's telling that they're not starting.
It is, mate. It is. Just the ladder at the moment. Sharks and Storm, they're where they should be, and they're clearly on top of the table. Dolphins and Panthers is a little bit misleading because they've already had their buys. So, I think the true ladder would have Dolphins, Panthers back down around 7th or 8th. So that can be a bit misleading, and we know that the Panthers are good. Dolphins, they're better than what I thought they were. However, I can't see them sustaining it. I mean, they're not going to sit up in that top 8 for me. I just can't see it happening.
What do you make of the Cowboys? They've really struggled defensively all year. They refuse to defend. They're almost like South Sydney.
Yeah, I agree. And I think over the first 6 weeks of the comp, a number of times I've mentioned and said to you that it is the most false top of the table team that I've ever seen. They were sitting up the top because they were playing teams that were horrendous. They bullied a couple of teams who were off. They can't defend. So they have leaked, and I was just brought it up now to have a look. At the moment, they've leaked 191 points. That's second only to the Rabbits. And they're talking about, the Rabbits having defensively their 3rd worst season since 1908. So that tells you how bad the Rabbits' defense is at the moment. And the Cowboys are second to them with most conceded points.
How much do you think it was underrated? I was thinking about this over the weekend, the loss of Tom Gilbert to the Cowboys, because Tom Gilbert is a superstar. Now, he's had a couple of injuries over the past 18 months, so he's been out. But when he was at the Cowboys, he was legit a force for them defensively. And the fact that, I saw something over the weekend, how the Penrith middles work together in defense. Fisher, Harris, and Leota, they are so fluid with their movements side to side. You watch the Cowboys, it's like stick figures everywhere. They're just like a white picket fence. They're all just like refusing to move with the rest of the team.
Yeah, not like a jagged white picket fence, because especially in behind the rock, they are
loose.
They are really loose. Yeah, the A and B defenders, which are your first and second bloke next to the markers, they seem to be way too loose, a lot looser than every other team in the comp. The other thing is they seem to be half a step behind as well. So especially yesterday, it was so evident that they were just getting back on side as Brayley had jumped out of dummy half and taken 2 or 3 steps, and then the Cronulla forwards and outside backs were just rolling through the middle with ease.
And so we've spoken about a few teams that have obvious concerns at the moment. Another one that you can put into that classification is Newcastle. The loss of Ponga now for 12 weeks. He's gone. The really sad part for him, Steve, is that he was playing awesome. He was playing superbly, and they still couldn't get results.
That's what I was going to say. So that's even before this, the Knights were struggling, and I saw them being in that bottom 4 this year because of how good he's playing. They're not winning games. They're not winning games at home, which, they normally, you bank them immediately at the start of the year. The Knights just win the majority of their games at home. And how are their halves feeling? What's the confusion there? I mean, what's the confusion with the blokes playing inside and outside of the halves? We've had Gamble and Hastings. And then Hastings got dropped and Cogger come in. And then Gamble got dropped and Hastings come back. And then the day before the game, Cogger gets dropped and Gamble comes back. So all of a sudden, they're on to their 4th halves combination in 7 games. That's just ridiculous. It really is.
We criticise people like Mike Maguire when they did this at West Tigers. West Tigers had 1,000 different halves combinations. I think the same criticism should be labelled on Adam O'Brien. And I'm a fan of Adams, but the fact that you train all off season with 2 guys who you expect to be the main 2 halves, and then you're so quick to chop and change based on what? Like wins and losses. Like you can't just go off wins and losses if you're changing total combinations.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, I understood Hastings Gamble for the first couple of weeks because they got into the finals, loyalty, bite the bullet, make the change. Everyone agreed Cogger should come in. But then it's just got even more chaotic. And now what do they do? I mean, Ponga's gone. I think myself and you have been screaming for Price to come into the side all year. So he probably comes in. Where are they going to play him? Do they go to fullback? He's not a natural fullback. And then what do they expect out of him? I don't think it's going to be a good season for the Knights. I really think that they're sitting 15th at the moment, and I can't see them getting out of that bottom 4.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. That's for sure. I just want to touch on the Storm. I've said before that whilst I don't think he's the best player at the Storm, I certainly think he's the most important, and that is Jerome Hughes. I think he is in career best form at the moment.
Yeah, he's the most important player there. Every time that it doesn't matter which one of their stars out, if he plays, they're a chance. And it's, he always plays so well. He's run first. His energy is there. The try that he scored on Thursday night was just a perfect example of not giving up on a play. And everything you do, if you're going to do it 100%.
He comes through at the Cowboys as a fullback. He played a couple of games there. I actually think he might have even played 1 game at the Titans. Don't quote me on that, but I think there was a quick stop there.
No, I think it might have been. I think it might have been the other way around. I think didn't he start at the Titans, played 1 game, and then went up to the Cowboys?
Could have, yes.
Yeah,
but he come from the Cowboys. Played a bit of fullback when I think Billy must have been hurt at the time. But his transformation to not only go from fringe fullback to premium halfback is quite astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah, and you think so? 2019, I think it was. Brodie Croft was their halfback, and he was their halfback for 24 rounds. So Hughes wasn't even in the side.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden, Croft fell out of form. He may have even got injured, and Hughes got a start and has been their starting halfback ever since.
It's quite astonishing, and I think it's one of the most underrated stories in the game, to be honest, because when we talk of halfbacks, we talk of like these stereotypical halfbacks, Mitch Moses, Nathan Cleary, Daly Cherry Evans. I don't think Jerome Hughes is as good as Nathan Cleary or Daly Cherry Evans, but he's his own sort of tier of player. Like he's very different.
He's not a traditional half at all, but he's an unbelievable half. And it's so strange that Bellamy's done it twice now, because Cooper Cronk wasn't a half. He was a rugby union centre.
Yeah.
So he'd He played a bit of 5'8", he played a bit of lock, and Bellamy helped turn him into the Australian halfback. Hughes, he's a fullback. Bellamy helps turn him into the New Zealand halfback. It's another just phenomenal coaching performance. I think it's because he can simplify it so much for them. Like, he doesn't overcomplicate things. It's, well, your best trait is run. So your first option should always be run. Otherwise, you're going to have this guy running these shapes. You make a decision, hit one of them, and then kick. Make your tackles and kick. That's realistically, obviously he's better than that, but that's how it all started for him.
The other guy I want to highlight from Melbourne, who I think is in the best form of his career by a country mile. And when he got signed to Melbourne, I think everyone was hopeful that this was the player he would turn into, and that's Xavier Coates.
He's awesome.
He's gone from like raw talent to do some freakish things to being reliably one of the best wingers in the game.
Yeah, he's awesome, mate. I think you could see it from when he was a kid. He's a big athletic thing, but he was also very raw. You said that, but he was also immature is not the right word, but he wasn't physically developed. Even though he was a big man, he was still like a baby. So he just continues to grow into his body, and the athleticism that he's got is it's impressive. It's so good to watch.
I think it would be really hard to deny him a spot for Queensland.
Oh, he has to be. He's got to be the first winger picked in my mind. I just think he's well, he was there last year. He was picked, first winger picked before he got injured, and he's playing better now than what he was then.
What are you looking forward to most this week?
Well, again, it's another round of some really interesting games. I think Anzac Day is going to be a great afternoon. So, head out to the march in the morning and settle in after lunch and watch 3 games of footy. Look, the Warriors-Titans game, it's going to be interesting. The Warriors are, for all the talk about how good they're going, they're 10th. So they need a win, and they need to probably have a good win. The Titans are now none from 6 or none from 7. So Des Hasler has just equaled the second most consecutive losses ever by an NRL coach. Not sure if you saw that one today, but that's a stat that come out. So the Titans, again, are going to be so desperate. I'm looking forward to watching that. Dragons Roosters games are always unreal on Anzac Day. And then it leads into the Storm and Rabbits. So the Storm just keep rolling on, and what's going to happen with the Rabbits? Can they put up a fight? Does the talk start again? I think they had the bye last weekend, so all the Demetrio chat around really won't he get sacked, it sort of settled a little bit because they weren't relevant. But now they're going to be back on the main stage Thursday night. And Manly Para, let's see if there's a response from Para. I mean, as a mad Para fan and blood invested in the Sea Eagles, it's going to be a game that I always find tough to watch because I want both teams to win and want both teams to lose, and it's quite frustrating. I just think Manly win that, and then Manly will be sitting, I think, second or third. So it's a big start for them. But yeah, will Para respond is the question.
The game for me is the Dragons and the Roosters. This is always a cracking game, no matter how good both teams are going. Dragons actually have a really good record on Anzac Day against the Roosters.
Dragons.
Yep.
This year they are. And I know we've laughed about it a few weeks ago, and, the hell on earth could Manly get beaten by the Dragons at Wollongong? Well, I'm telling you, Dragons will beat the Roosters this week, and it'll be interesting to see what Robinson's next excuse is, because he's scraping the bottom of the barrel with his excuses at the moment, and it's starting to get a little bit annoying.
The Roosters have to turn things around pretty quick, because you get into a stage where if you don't bank your wins early, you're chasing your tail at the end of the year. You cannot rest players. Like, you can't sort of prepare for finals in any way because you're flat out making it. And the competition's too tight.
That's right. They're going to be impacted by Origin.
Yep. And the competition's too tight to be mucking around with, not banking the winnable games that you've got in your schedule. So it's going to be tough. I think the Roosters...
They're right. Sorry to interrupt you, mate, but just looking at the ladder, they are right at a really crucial point. Dragons and Roosters. Dragons win, they're sitting solid bottom of the 8. Roosters lose, and it's 3 and 5. 3 and 5, and down the bottom with Tigers and Knights.
Yeah, 3 and 5 coming into Origin. Not ideal. Not ideal. So they need to string some wins together, that's for sure. The other game, Raiders and Cronulla. Raiders get back home. I'm sure that they'll be much better after this week. And the Sharks have a horrible record against the Raiders in Canberra. So I'd be throwing all form guides out for that one as well. I think it'd be a ripper of a game. Seeps, thanks very much for your time, mate. It should be a good weekend of footy, hey?
Thanks, mate.
This has been the 6 Go podcast, and that is full time.